We got Dr. Braxton Hunter, pretty talented and well-known apologist. Shared the stage with the William Lane Craigs to the Mike Laconas to all those guys. Jonathan Pritchett, Dr. Pritchett is here, and he is a New Testament guy and does a lot of stuff, a lot of podcasts, a lot of debates, so on and so forth.
So is the guy on the left Jerry Lewis, and Braxton's trying to be Dean Martin here? The straight guy and the funny guy?
They gave us nothing but tradition and no argument. All they did was get on this stage, yell real loud, and set a straw man on fire.
Okay, now, I was not impressed.
I need a dumb guy. Do I have any volunteers who wants to be my sidekick, the dumb guy?
Respectfully, that sounds like a little bit of a dodge.
I'm claiming victory.
So where I come from, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of Trinity Radio. I'm Dumb Sidekick, and along with me is
Braxton Hunter.
And today we are going to talk about, what are we talking about?
We're talking about whether Christianity or religion in general is in decline in the United States.
That's right. You told me that before the show, and I already forgot. Stick with us. This will be something.
And now, today's topic.
Justin Martyr and the 21st century. Yesterday I read through Justin Martyr's first apology. By the way, everyone should. Justin came from a pagan background and was converted to Christianity when he met an evangelistic Christian walking down the beach one day. But he wrote to the emperor to explain, hey, you guys completely misunderstand Christianity. You've heard a bunch of scornful mockery about us, and a lot of it isn't true. What you guys are getting right, you misunderstand our reasons for believing it. This is a problem that persists until today. As I've said quite a bit recently, atheist antagonists on the internet seem to resort to mostly rhetoric. In a recent discussion on Modern Day Debates YouTube channel, one atheist mentioned that Christianity is bad for America partly because of certain characters like Steven Anderson who think people should receive the death penalty for unbiblical sexual preferences. Now, ask yourself a question. Do you know one single Christian in your personal life who would agree with such an asinine statement? Have you ever met one? The same sort of scornful mockery Justin faced still exists. And just as Justin noted that our interlocutors often misunderstand our reasons for believing what they do get right, I yesterday heard yet another YouTuber duplicate the mistake that the Kalam cosmological argument is flawed because of an equivocation fallacy regarding the word cause in the first premise and the conclusion. We're talking about efficient in both cases, not material. Get it down. In the end, it's at once comforting and saddening to see that those skeptical of Christianity today make the same mistakes their forebears made in Justin's day, all the way back in the 2nd century. And unfortunately, baseless rhetoric has always been powerful when it comes to persuasion. Nevertheless, baseless it is.
And now, today's topic.
And welcome back to the main show. You're here again with Dr. Jonathan Pritchett and me. And today we're going to be talking about, I said Christianity or religion in America. Really, we're talking about the Western world, although we are going to make some comments specifically about America. This is on my mind because, as you know, Dr. Pritchett, we often hear about how religion or Christianity specifically is in decline in the United States, and how atheism and agnosticism is on the rise, and it's because young intellectuals are seeing the truth and they're leaving the cross.
Which I debunked in a recent article in the Journal of Ecclesia Scholar Society about how that's overblown. But
it is over. It's not just overblown. Well, so there is a journal article from September 2017 in Evolutionary Psychological Science. Does that sound like an evangelical journal article to you?
No, but it sounds like something I would never read either.
But this article from the EPS, I guess we could say, is The Future of Secularism, a biologically informed theory supplemented with cross-cultural evidence. The Future of Secularism. So this is from Lee Ellis Anthony, W. Haskin, Edward Dutton, Helmuth Nyborg.
It took how many people to write a journal article?
Well, sometimes these, studies of studies and things like that have
Christians,
multiple...
you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. So
because usually only one guy writes an article.
Yeah. So I'm going to read you a bit from this. Now,
it takes a village in secular academia. Is
right.
That what
and I do want to say this.
This
is a tip to any of you who are in the blog world, the YouTube world, or who are working on research. We notice most of the time we notice when you cite a journal article and you only cite the abstract for that journal article. Now, you don't see this as much with people who are students at a credible school like Trinity, because along with your student ID comes most of the time like a journal database membership,
Right.
where you can get to these somewhat dark web journal databases. And so
The deep state journal articles.
yeah, you get to get in there and you can actually read them, and you don't have to pay to read them. See, everyday people who don't
They're
to
paying for tuition to read them.
Well, yeah, but the people that are just they're not going to school, who are just bloggers, all they can often access is the abstract for such a journal article. This particular one, you can check me out because it's free, available everywhere. But even so, many of the people writing like responses to this will just cite the abstract. Why is that important? Because one, it tells me you were a bit lazy. Yes. You didn't want to read this multi-page journal article in small print and 4 columns.
How many pages is the article?
I don't know, but let's see. This one is like, 20 pages, 18 pages, something like that. But small print, multiple columns, a lot of data, a lot of graphs, we can't
pie
trudge
charts
through all that. Yeah. So they'll just cite the abstract, because the abstract just gives you kind of a synopsis of what's going on here. Yeah. And so when you see the quotes in a blog article, it means probably that blog article author didn't take the time to go through this. Anyway, we see some of that with this. But
so what you're saying is they're lazy and they probably don't know
and miss the point because of it.
Right. And they don't know what the article is actually about in any depth whatsoever, other than the buzz phrase from the abstract.
Right, and I can't know that for sure, but I can pick up hints.
No, if you're citing the abstract and not the article,
right,
that's a pretty big hint that you couldn't find anything in the either you couldn't find anything in the article and you want to be misleading, or you didn't read the article.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I'm going to read to you from the article itself, because I did read the whole entire thing, Jonathan Pritchett.
Yeah, I didn't.
So here it is: the future of secularism, a biologically informed theory supplemented with cross-cultural evidence.
Are you going to read the whole thing?
No. Okay. But I'm going to read. I've cherry-picked some sections here that are relevant to what we're talking about. The trend. So in discussing secularization. Oh, by the way, it'll be important for people to know, and we mentioned this a couple of years ago we did another podcast on secularization. There is what is called the secularization hypothesis, and that's basically when you hear that, what they're talking about is this hypothesis that Western countries are becoming more and more secularized and less religious. And they're going to define this in the article, but there's a difference between religious affiliation and religiosity. Yeah. Religious affiliation is, do you go to church? Do you do religious stuff?
Yeah.
Religiosity is, what are you actually thinking about it?
Yeah, what do your belief systems.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, quote, in discussing secularization, it is useful to distinguish between religious affiliation, there it is, and religiosity. Much of the evidence offered in support of the secularization hypothesis has pertained to the former rather than the latter.
Religious affiliation, not religiosity.
For example, religious affiliation appears to have declined in a number of Western countries throughout the 20th century. When it comes to holding religious beliefs, e.g. belief in God, belief in the belief in life after death, European trends have also been downward, although less dramatically than in the case of religious affiliation. However, if attention is focused on just the past 15 years or so, this is going to come as a shock, I think, to a lot of people. Europeans actually appear to have reversed course toward greater religiosity.
But not religious affiliation.
Right. In the USA, religious attendance and membership, which is religious affiliation, rates have remained fairly stable since the middle of the 20th century. Similarly, the proportion of adults who believe in God, immortality, and other common religious doctrines has changed very little over the past 60 years. That's religiosity. Mm-hmm. The only notable qualification is a modest increase in the proportion of adult Americans who are atheist, agnostic, and without any religious preference during the past couple of decades. So what they're saying is that it's actually gotten a little bit better in European countries. And in the United States, there hasn't been a dramatic change.
Right.
The evangelicals are keeping up with the growth of society as a whole.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about why in just a few minutes. But how can that be When, on the other hand, we have atheist and an increase in people identifying as atheist and agnostics. The way that the atheist and agnostics spin that is, well, the atheists and agnostics are taking over. More people are leaving religion and leaving religiosity and becoming atheists and agnostics.
But that's false. The data doesn't support that.
Yeah.
As we said, 2 to 5% at the most in the U.S. is atheist or agnostic. Right. Most people are identifying as nuns now.
And that's not an atheist necessarily.
Or an agnostic.
Right.
And of the people that identify as atheists, you know how many of them believe in God? More than you think.
Yeah.
You know how many believe, and then when the afterlife question comes up, how many atheists believe in afterlife, kicks up again. So
nuns. How many nuns believe in an afterlife?
Most of them.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm talking about the people who identify as atheists.
Oh, yes. We did an episode
We have
on
atheists who believe in God, atheists who believe in life after death. So when you look at...
I know, that sounds really strange. I know.
But that's how they identify when they answer these questions to Barna, to Pew Research, all this stuff.
We went over one in a Christmas special, I think, from a couple of years ago. And if you want more on the nuns, we talked about that in some detail in a recent episode, maybe from last season, on Generation Z and what's going on with them. So,
Yeah, so religiosity is not going anywhere.
Now, this goes right along with, some of you may be familiar that probably the world's most famous debating apologist is William Lane Craig. And William Lane Craig recently was on Ben Shapiro's show, and a lot of people have seen that now. I got to tell you, obviously, I'm a fan of Craig. I realize, for those of you hipster apologists out there, it's not cool to, think that Craig is great and awesome.
Is that really a thing for hipsters?
Yes, that's a thing. Well, when you ask people, who's your favorite apologist, or what do you think about William Lane Craig, you get these answers that, well, of course, Craig's done his thing. But I think there's it's just like me being a U2 fan or whatever. It's like whoever has the biggest sales, the biggest impact, the biggest, whatever. Well, then we can't be for that. That's the hipster mentality.
I thought it was only like the hardcore reformed people who poo-poo.
Oh, they're definitely, but I think that's for different reasons.
Yeah, but I thought they were the only people who poo-pooed.
Most of your non-reformed classical apologists or evidential apologists are not going to say too much disparaging about William Lane Craig, but you still, I think I see it. Maybe you're sensitive to it. That could be. I was told by a recent...
but I want to say I'm not doubting it, because if the hipster apologists are not going to like somebody, they're going to pick the most prominent person and say, I understand that, but I have this apologist that you've never heard of, that nobody's ever heard of, that has a YouTube channel with 5
I'm
subscribers.
frankly surprised this hasn't happened with Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I think the reason for that is now we can shove all that blame onto Disney.
See, this is what I think's happening. All the hipsters are like, there's William Lane Craig, but I prefer the more up and coming low key people like
the one
Braxton,
that nobody knows about.
Braxton Hunter, for example.
Oh, well.
So you're actually the guy with a few YouTube subscribers, a few big debates. You're the up and comers, so you're the guy that the hipsters are going to like.
That's nice.
They're not going to like Craig, but they're going to all point to Braxton Hunter and be like, but those of us in the know about apologetics, Braxton Hunter's really he's the real
This may
deal.
be the first time anybody told me this, and this is going to seem like self-congratulatory, but it actually allows me to highlight the first video I ever made when we started taking the YouTube seriously, and it was the video, "What are Christian apologists getting wrong?" or something like that.
Yeah,
it's like the first one. This guy posted today, an hour ago, Jay. And he put, "Wow, stumbled on this gem," because I was talking in that video about how Christian apologists get so infatuated with Christian apologetics that they stop studying the Bible, and how that's a problem. This guy said, "Wow, stumbled on this gem, and it so perfectly describes what I'm going through right now. I came to faith through apologetics."
Yeah, that never happens.
You hear that?
No, that doesn't happen.
2 years ago.
I don't believe it.
And have been obsessively...
Extraordinary claims and something...
He came to faith through apologetics 2 years ago and have been obsessively studying it to the point where it has now been damaging to my life, because to the exclusion of other things.
Right.
Early on, my study of apologetics went hand in hand with theology. Now I struggle to make time to study theology at all. It's so refreshing to know that one of my favorite apologists
so
had a similar battle. But see, this is what it's like.
But look, I wasn't trying to float your boat. I'm saying if you're the anti-Craig for all of these hipster apologists, that sucks. But I wouldn't want to be the hipster
because
apologist.
It's like the bands that hipsters like, the rock bands, if you go look at them, 9 out of 10 of them, their influences was you too.
Right. But see, I don't want to be that hipster
I like
band.
Craig, so
I want to be on the mainstream label.
You want to be you too.
Rocking arenas.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right, so anyway.
You'll get there, though.
What does this data seem to support? So when Craig was on the Ben Shapiro show, which I do think that is a fabulous interview, there are so many great little, obviously Ben Shapiro's people know how to craft an interview to get the best stuff in succinct sections, and you got that. It was fantastic. But here's what William Lane Craig, they were talking about this very issue of the secularization hypothesis.
But before Braxton Hunter gets to that, have you ever considered what you're going to buy for a life insurance? That's what I can't stand about Ben Shapiro show.
By the way, if you'd like to come to Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary, TrinitySem.edu.
But you know what I'm talking about when you're watching his show.
I know.
Before you answer that, I want to talk about life insurance or how to protect your
And then I hated
online.
it at the very end. They're like, he asked him some question that, frankly, I didn't care about, so it was fine. Yeah. He's like, if you want to hear Dr. Craig's answer to that, you have to pay us $10 a month or $100 a year and get the Shapiro Shapiro shtick.
Speaking of which, if you want to pay us some stuff,
you can give us $9.99 a month. We're fine with that.
There's
or $100
a link up here to become a patron.
Yes, patrons.
We love that. Somewhere. Our patrons are awesome.
If you're listening by audio, you can go to patreon.com/TrinityRadio.
Yes.
All right. But now let's get to it. So William Lane Craig, they're talking about the secularization hypothesis. They didn't call it that. That's what they're talking about. And Craig says, I think what's happening is not so much an increase in secularization.
There you go again with the... And it's not so even as good as you think it is.
I think it's pretty good, Jonathan.
Okay.
As the collapse of the old mainline Christian denominations like the Episcopalian, the Catholics, the Presbyterian, the Congregationalists, and so forth. And as a result, there is an increasing...
Wait, why did he say Congregationalists in the same breath as mainline Protestant denominations?
I think he just means... He was speaking, and I just think he means denominational groups.
Okay.
And as a result, there is an increasing polarization in American society. People are evacuating the middle and going either to the secular end or to the evangelical, and evangelicals are maintaining their percentage of the American population, keeping up with the population growth. But the impression of increasing secularization exists because the middle is emptying out and these old line denominations are all collapsing. That's very interesting, and I think it's that's very interesting, Jonathan. That's very interesting.
Well,
and I think it's a reflection of the fact that people who are just nominally religious, in a sense, are just... I can't keep it going because I keep getting stuck.
Hang it up.
In a sense, come to the realization that they don't really believe this. And so why should you get up in the dark and cold on a Sunday morning to go worship somebody you don't really think is there? And so as a result, those who have been simply nominal in their beliefs, I think, are increasingly recognizing that.
Yeah, let me break that.
It goes right along with the study.
It says, we've just been going through the motions, and now we're dropping the pretense, and we're going to stop going through these motions because we really don't believe it. And so people have stopped.
And
going
some of those
church.
people become atheist or agnostic.
Yes, and notice that, which is fine because they had some sort of Episcopalian preacher, pastor, elder, whatever, that didn't believe in God either.
Now, don't tick off our Episcopalian constituents.
No, if you're Episcopalian, either stop being Episcopalian or fix your denomination.
Or join the form of Episcopalianism that's still theologically conservative.
Okay, stop being, be a real, no, there actually is an Anglican Church of America now because the Episcopalian brand which is also Anglicanism, has gone down the toilet. So they're like, we don't want to be, no, we're different.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sorry to be mean, but if you're an Episcopalian...
We got a lot of great Anglican students.
Yeah. If you're an Episcopalian, you've got to get your house in order.
So what the article does is support, or what that interview, Craig's points in that interview, they support the journal article that we read that, religiosity is hanging in there.
Yeah.
But religious affiliations are down a little bit.
Yeah.
And among those, some people are becoming atheist and agnostic, which just means
very
the people
few
that were already atheist and agnostic, but were just nominally going to church and doing the stuff because they thought they were supposed to, or because people in their family or their spouse or whatever, some of those people are being what they already were. That's not a growth. and it's not getting the people who had the religiosity, the people who really believe this stuff. Although I'm sure that does happen to some degree. You're getting the religiously affiliated people.
Yeah.
You know?
It's the same thing with, in secular universities, you've got hard sciences where there's a lot of atheists, agnostics, skeptics, whatever, kind of bunnied around the science department. Then everywhere else is a bunch of pagans and Christians even.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that was another thing Craig said in
the
interview,
humanities, yeah.
was that he said there's a very healthy respect for theism among the philosophy departments. Even the atheists there don't like universally scorn the theistic philosophers.
Yes, and because I've said it a million times, because atheist philosophers owe a debt of gratitude to theist philosophers for keeping them relevant.
And they know that.
And they do know that.
Yeah. So what is the criticism of the journal article? So we've heard Craig's thoughts, and they sync up real well with this journal article from 2017. Now, this is from the Friendly Atheist blog written by Lauren Nelson. The first thing you get, now I'm not saying that Lauren Nelson didn't read the whole article, but I'm telling you that the first thing you get is a paragraph citation that is from the abstract. It's like half of the abstract.
Well, like I said, we can include two things. He found nothing in the article quote-worthy enough to make a point that the article never made in the first place just by quoting the abstract, or he didn't read it. One of those two options has to be true. That's not a false dilemma. It's one of those two things. Otherwise, if he would have found something in the article worth quoting that supported his thesis, he would have quoted directly from the article and not the abstract.
You know, it just occurs to me now, though, I need to explain
something.
I need to explain something about what this article stated, because you'll recall I said that the title of this was a biologically informed theory. So before I read her comments, because it's not going to make sense if I don't read the theory. So here is what they said. Mm-hmm. While cross-sectional in nature, when our results are combined with evidences that both religiosity and fertility are substantially heritable traits, findings are consistent with the view that earlier trends towards secularization due to science education surrounding advancements in science are currently being counterbalanced by genetic and reproductive forces. Okay, so what the article has found, and this is not the only article that has concluded this, is that people who are not religious. Now, I realize that for some Christians, and even in that Ben Shapiro interview, William Lane Craig decried being categorized as religious. But when we say religious,
that's kind of
we mean people who are practicing their faith in some sort of formalized way.
I don't think of myself as religious.
You're in a relationship, aren't you? But, honestly, as I've been studying early Roman history, I got to tell you something. I am glad for the relationship side of it, because in ancient Rome, as long as you went through the rituals, you were good. In fact, you were looked down upon a little bit if you got a little too passionate. And I kind of like the fact that Christianity came along and said, no, Jesus lives in my heart. I like that side of it. But anyway, so what they're saying is, look, people that are not religious are less likely to have as many children. They're not going to have as many children. And that's just a fact.
Now, does that correlate with the fact that all the other studies that says like Christian married couples have better sex than everyone else?
There is that study.
They're studies.
They're more sexually happy.
Yeah, they're more sexually fulfilled. So that could probably have something to do with it.
But the thing about it, also what has to do with it, now this...
Want better sex? Get married.
There are
believe
studies
in the
on
Lord
this,
Jesus Christ, right? I mean, that's what...
Yeah.
That's what is... Seriously. Because they ain't having kids, and, could be the fact that they ain't having.
Well, that's part of it. Another part of it
too.
is, and there was recently I mentioned in the first word or the last word, I don't know which, this YouTube channel, Modern Day Debates. Mm-hmm. They have these like anybody can debate type things, mm-hmm. but they had a really interesting debate about is Christianity good for America? And this was actually the guy that was taking the "it is good for America" thing was citing some articles that were saying that where was I going with that? Oh, the sexual revolution is kind of where all this began. Mm-hmm. In the late 50s, early 60s, as you had contraceptive, mm-hmm. Really kind of not mastered, but workable, mm-hmm. and now it was available. And then you had the sexual revolution, because mm-hmm. now you could have multiple sexual partners without the risks, the obvious risk of pregnancy. Now, there were other risks that we found out about later on, right?
Right.
But without the risk of pregnancy to the same degree. And so as a result, the average person, male and female, had more sexual partners by a lot than they had previously, because previously, if you wanted to have sex safely, like without worrying too much about these kind of things, you courted, you dated, you married. There was the exchanging of commitments. Now, it's not that there wasn't always prostitution and things like that. You could still have sex outside of marriage, but it wasn't like it is now. Yeah. And this has led to all kinds of problems, because one thing that anthropologists and social scientists will tell you is, and historians will tell you is, when a society starts to destroy the family unit, that's going to be the end of that society.
Right. Well, thankfully, though, the sexual revolution has come full circle, and now they're leading the abstinence-only charge from Alyssa Milano, saying we're on a sex strike. So pro-choice women are not going to be having sex with anybody because of all these laws that are cracking down on unfettered abortions. And so, thank goodness these.
I've been on a strike on doing that with pro-abortion women all my life.
Right. So, but I'm glad that they've come around to understand that abstinence is a worthy aspiration in life. It's certainly going to prevent abortions if these pro-choice women aren't having sex. They won't get pregnant and they won't abort babies. So I'm all for this sex strike. This sex strike is brilliant, and 100% for it. Thank you.
But this goes back to the problem.
You know how much it affected my marriage? None.
Well, you're not married to a pro-abortion woman. You have also been on this lifelong strike that I've been on.
Right.
That we're not interested in pro-abortion women.
Right.
So we're interested in you repenting. But anyway, here's the thing.
So sex strike
that
all day
is
long.
a very stark example of a much subtler but widespread reality, which is that people who are secular tend to have less kids. It could be because contraceptive and the sexual revolution has made it more feasible for them to do that.
You couple that with people getting married later.
Getting married later when fertility is decreased anyway. Yeah, this sort of thing happens. And so but whatever the case may be, one thing that is not arguable is that the fertility rates, by which we simply mean the children that they're having, is much greater among religious people than it is non-religious people. So what that means is, now get this is a very interesting point. We're hearing about this rise in secularism, but religion is worldview is a heritable trait. Now, what we don't mean by that, and what the people doing these studies do not mean by that, is that there's like a religion gene that gets passed on. But what they do mean is, if your parents were religious, or if your parents were atheist, whatever, you're going to be much, much more likely to be what they were. And so as a result of that, atheism and secularism, many of these people are saying it can never.
Wait a minute.
You're
saying that some of these atheists out there are only atheists because they were.
Yes, and I just saw something great in the Christian Apologetics.
Where have we heard that type of reasoning?
I know.
Okay.
But this great thing in this Christian Apologetics support group, I just saw someone say, I think that's where it was. So they said, next time somebody says, if you were born in the Middle East, you wouldn't be a Christian. And you say back to them, if you were born in the Middle East, you wouldn't be an atheist. Now what? How does that help our conversation? We're talking about truth here, right? Yeah. But the point is, it's still the case that you're more likely to take on the religion or worldview that you're raised with. So since that's now it's not always the case, obviously, but since that's a largely heritable trait, and these people that that have the secular worldview,
inheritable,
heritable, yeah. So the people that have this trait and are passing it on are not having more kids, so they're not passing it on
to anybody. You're not raising.
You're going to die out.
Yeah, I mean, aren't a lot of these atheists like antinatalists because they think it'd have been better to never have been born, and so they don't bring more kids into the world? And some of them think that the world's going to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, there's probably some Christians that think that too. Yeah, but here's the thing that happens, Jonathan, is when you don't have when you have this lack of a certain segment of the population, what has to happen for the economy to function well is that has to be replaced by something.
Yeah, if it's not being replaced by future generations, it's going to be replaced by immigrants, right?
Immigrants.
Yeah.
And guess what immigrants to our south bring us?
Theism.
Religion, theism, Catholicism, right? And we do get immigrants from other places too, but you know what they are? Religious of some sort or other,
Right.
which is why...
Because they're coming here for religious freedoms.
You know who has a higher birth rate than Christians?
Who?
Islam, Muslims.
Yeah.
Which means that, and you'll love this point, as I thought through all of this, as I was looking at the data, I thought, you know where apologists really ought to be focusing their attention or preparing to focus their attention?
Sex and babies among Christians.
Well, that's a great apologetic. I love that apologetic.
Yeah,
Have more babies.
Get married, have lots of sex and babies. That could actually make apologetics popular in churches.
Yeah.
So we need to get on.
The first ever apologetics Christian purity sexual conference. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to think of a better name. That's not a great one.
Right.
But here's
man,
the thing.
yeah.
But here's the thing. No, Islam. We need to be preparing for Islam.
Yeah.
Obviously. I mean, it's already, you've got, 1.8 billion or something. But the thing about it is, Islam is going to, they're outbirthing us.
Yes.
So that's what we need to be concerned with. And atheism is almost, negligible when we go into the far
sounds like
future.
a self-defeating kind of thing that it'll eventually wear itself out. It's not self-defeating. I meant to say self-correcting problem. Atheism is a problem, but it'll correct itself by there being no more atheists within 5 generations, right?
Yeah, and not that long. It won't even take that long. And here's the thing that's interesting about it is I'm not interested in getting into a political discussion about immigration policy.
Is this the golden age of atheism right now?
Maybe.
And you managed 5%?
But notice, a lot of these secularists are the ones who are
Rethink your YouTube channel. You're failing.
A lot of these secularists are the ones...
And there's bad sex in atheism.
Pushing the hardest for immigration.
Yeah.
So they're pushing for the things, the contraceptive, the immigration, the antiquated marriage needs to go away kind of thing. They're pushing for all the things that are going to encroach on their own demographic long term.
So it is self-defeating too.
Yeah.
It's self-correcting and self-defeating. And all kinds of just... And it's a false worldview anyway.
So at this point, I think we're ready now to move on to the Friendly Atheist article by Lauren, what's her name, Nelson.
So all of that was just preface?
No. We've read the journal article. We've heard what William Lane Craig has to say, and so I mean, we've now given our commentary, but we need to hear what the pushback is. To this. Okay, so the Friendly Atheist is writing about this journal article that we've read portions of. And she says, Lauren Nelson says, she focuses on contraceptive use and says married religious people may use it just as much as secular people. Now,
we can do a straw man poll here. We don't use contraceptives in our house.
Yeah, we don't either. But here's the thing, though.
That's anecdotal, I know.
Right, that's anecdotal.
But so is that comment. Well, we don't know what they're doing.
Well, that's fine, but here's the thing about it is...
So I guess...
It misses the point. It misses the point.
Mm-hmm.
Is contraceptive a piece of this puzzle? Yes. What we're kind of saying is that contraceptive plays a role among secularists.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is not...
You mean Christians aren't advocating for free condoms all over public school systems?
But are they?
No.
I'm glad to hear it.
Not that I'm aware of.
They're promoting abstinence, right?
Yes.
Just like Alyssa Milano.
Right.
But here's the thing. The point is, even if it's true, even if it were true that married people use contraceptives more than secularists.
How did she not see that coming, that everyone was going to jump on that and be like...
These people don't. They just speak. They don't think.
Okay.
The point is not that, let's just imagine that religious people used contraceptives more than secularists.
They're still having more kids.
They're having more kids.
Right.
So they use contraceptives as a part of their family planning. And we're not here to talk about the politics or morality of contraceptives either. The point is that they're using it as a part of their family planning, but they still tend to have a bunch of babies.
Right.
Whereas secularists are using it to prevent pregnancy until they're at a non-fertile age or whatever in general.
Yeah.
Right? So that completely misses
the
the
two
point.
different goals for which she doesn't know whether or not they do. She's saying it could be the case, which, okay.
It's kind of like this. It's kind of like saying drunk drivers get in car accidents. That's true. But people who aren't drunk drive cars all the time. Well, that's right. Of course we do. The point is not about the cars. The point is about what you're doing with the cars.
No, this
right?
is actually worse than that because she said that it could be the case that religious people use it as much. It could be.
She may have given. I'm not going to pull up the article again, but she may have given some kind of stats from some other article.
Again,
but the point is, even if you made your point,
right.
and I'm giving you more, let's say it happened more.
It's still the baby count.
Yeah. And the baby count is what we know. All right. She also says, let's see, focuses on the rise in, this is me paraphrasing, focuses on the rise in numbers who identify as atheists and agnostics. Now, this is the kind of thing that makes you wonder if she read the article, because this goes back to what we just said from the article and then from William Lane Craig. Yes, there is an increase in people who claim to be atheists and agnostics. Mm-hmm. What's happening is the mainline denominations are dying down, and the people who were nominal churchgoers or whatever, some of them are becoming atheists and agnostics. Now, we're not saying that there aren't some people who were truly practicing their faith and believed it who became atheists. That's not the point. The point is, by and large, we're seeing the denominations crumble and moving to the poles of, no, I really am believing this stuff, and I never really believed it to
But what
begin
you're
with.
talking about on the rise, you're talking about going from maybe 3% to 5%.
And that's a relevant thing to bring up, yes.
Yeah. Versus...
I don't know those numbers, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go to Pew has that. The big Pew thing that had the big news about the nuns, right? Atheism is still only, capping out at 3 to 5%. Atheism, put all that in the same bucket, atheism, agnostic, whatever. Now some of those nuns might be that, but they also believe in God.
Yeah.
In heaven.
Right.
And some of the atheists in that 3 to 5% believe in heaven. Or
Oddly, yes.
Or even God. So who knows? What I think that she probably, what I would agree with is on the rise compared to where it was, a generation or two ago. Mm-hmm. But in terms of overall population growth and proportion to the rest of the population, not really. Now, they're louder than they've ever been.
Now, another thing she throws in is to say, well, this is all because atheists are persecuted in the country. They're not treated well. They don't get jobs as easily, this sort of thing.
Oh, give me a break.
Which, I mean, could...
Did she cite information on
maybe,
that?
but it could somehow loop around to fertility.
Or atheists are like, I can't find work, and I'm an atheist and I feel persecuted. Oh, did you tell your potential employer during the interview that you're an atheist? No, but I know it's because I'm an atheist.
Right.
I mean, how would you know?
Right.
I have worked a ton of secular jobs before I got here, into this final career of my life. I was never asked, are you a Christian?
Right.
When I went to go work at like Subway or the Country Sampler or LabCorp.
I'm not sure I was asked if I was a Christian when I went to become a pastor. They just asked me my doctrinal views.
Yeah.
I could go to a Lord of the Rings convention and give my doctrinal views on Tolkien's world.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Where is this persecution against atheists happening? I remember there was a debate with William Lane Craig, where before the debate they kind of usurped the forum to do this. Do you believe in atheists should be persecuted in America? And everyone in the church said, oh, you remember that? I think it was at Willow Creek. Anyway, it was Shermer who did this, and he took advantage of his introduction of the atheist debater to start giving a political spiel.
Yeah. And
I just kept thinking to myself, yeah, no one's for persecuting atheists. Where is this happening?
Right.
Where is this happening?
Yeah.
I would like to know.
Not in Evansville.
No, and in fact, it seems like the opposite would be true, that if you are religious, well, you better not really believe your religion because we don't want you there.
I'll tell you where it might be happening. When I was in the Bahamas, now this goes all the way back to 2006, they told me that, because they're very conservative politically and theologically, the people that live in the Bahamas, not the people, they call it, like in Nassau, they call it the hump. And by the way, I was there speaking, doing evangelistic work for a week. I wasn't there just vacationing. I've never been there vacationing.
I have.
But
it's great.
They have, as islands do, a hill in the middle of the island, right? Mm-hmm. And they call that the hump. And if you're on the touristy side of the hump, who knows what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But on the other side of the hump, where the Bahamians live, very conservative, very conservative. And I asked the guy, I said, what about atheism in the Bahamas. And he's like, atheism? Are you kidding me? I was like, you don't have atheists? He's like, look around you at God's beautiful creation. And I was like, well, I know, but surely there are atheists. He said, yeah, there are. But he said, if you're an atheist here, you want to keep that to yourself because people think that you're not as intelligent as the rest of the community. So maybe there it has an impact.
Yeah, but in the U.S. or in the UK, are you telling me that if you're an atheist, well, you're not going to get a job, you're going to be persecuted?
I can't see it.
I can't. I'm not saying it never happens, but I've lived in the Bible Belt for most of my adult life, and no one ever asked me what my religious belief was. Is can you do this job?
Right.
Anyway, but yeah. So if you're trying to get a job as a church secretary, and you're like, I'm an atheist, is that going to be a problem? Yep.
Yeah.
Then, well, don't try to get a job as a church secretary, but wherever this persecution is happening, I don't know.
Yeah. All right,
What's
so
our
now
next
let's
thing?
move on to the last thing. And it was an interesting piece that I'd noticed in the middle of this journal article where where the person is summarizing, kind of doing a review of where the research has been.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about once it was realized that this, what do they call it, secularization thing is actually likely in the near future or is happening now. The researchers had to come up with other theories for what is going on. And so this is I thought this was good. Quote, this is from the article. Quote, by the way, this is not from the atheist article. This is from the article, The Future of Secularism, that I was citing throughout.
Biological blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Okay. Quote, failures to find much, if any, diminution in religious belief, especially worldwide, has prompted some social scientists to propose modified versions of the secularization theory. Other social scientists have actually suggested that secularization will never occur because religiosity fulfills fundamental spiritual needs for most humans.
Now, stop right there. What do they mean by spiritual?
Well, hold on. The last sentence. One proponent of this latter view argued that human needs for a spiritual life are actually strong evidence for the reality of a supernatural realm.
That's what C.S. Lewis argued.
Exactly what C.S. I wonder if this person knew that. I bet not.
Right. But I just think that's interesting.
Because remember, this is in evolutionary psychological science.
Right, this is peer-reviewed science, blah, blah. Well, it's a soft science, psychology, but still. Yeah, so I find that interesting that they just kind of capitulate to the idea of a spiritual life, and I'm always curious what secular...
Well, they have to have categories for these things.
Right.
And they do see that there's benefits that come from whatever this is.
Yeah.
But he's saying here, they're saying here that one of these researchers is like, whatever this is, it's so powerful that maybe
It's not
there's a
going
whatever that place is, and whatever is, and it's real.
Well, yeah, but
you know?
even the sentence before that, though, that it's probably never going to go out of style,
Right.
in human thinking, because there's always... So, yeah.
And because, as we've seen,
And if you're a cumulative
secularization
case
takes care of itself.
apologist, that's a good thing for your bucket, you
yeah.
know? What about this piece of data? So... Yeah, just because it's there doesn't mean, just because we have that longing doesn't mean it exists. But it...
Or does it?
Or does it? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm always curious what they mean by the terms like spirit, because I'm convinced that most people are not going to ever be agnostics or atheists, but I can see kind of a chaotic paganism like Homer's reality coming back into fashion, and Christianity and even Islam. Islam would have to contend with that just as much as Christianity would have to contend with it.
Islam is doing well contending. But here's the kind of pastoral thing that we need to remember about all this. We never know for sure what the future is going to hold. And it only ever takes one generation to utterly destroy something. If French-speaking people stopped speaking French for one generation, if there were no more French-speaking people after one generation, we would lose the French language. We would still have it. We could still, kind of like Greek, the ancient Greek. You'd never be able to perfectly replicate it again what it was. Right. And so in the same way, we've got to remember that evangelism is still very important, because even if it is the case, we don't know for sure what the future is going to hold. And we don't know, we're promised that Christ Church is never going to evaporate completely off the face of the earth. But...
Not promise it'll be a glow,
We're not promised it won't get
unless
small.
you're a post-mill.
Yeah, we're not thinking of eschatological things because people quite literally believe that it's going to evaporate off the earth. But I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, not the post-millennials. I said, no, the world will be Christianized.
But I'm just saying.
And then Jesus will come.
Okay, but until then, it could get.
Yeah, I don't
smaller.
buy post-millennialism.
But it could get much smaller.
Sorry, Thomas Linton.
And
I know
so
he's still waving that banner, but
evangelism is very important because there are still always going to be people that are unbelievers among us, whatever their religion or non-religion. And so we want to see those numbers even better, because we don't just want to birth our way to the majority. We want to see people that are not our children come to Christ. I'll tell this, and I've told this many times when I preach, that when I was pastoring, my wife taught a Sunday school class, and there were women in there ranging from 20 years old to 50 years old. And she asked on one occasion the women to tell about the last time they had led someone to Christ. Mm-hmm. And she was just naive enough to think that if you're a Christian, you're leading people to Christ. I mean, that's what Christians do. And there was only one woman in that class who had ever led someone to Christ, and it was her kid. Mm-hmm. Well, thank God for her kid, but what about somebody else's kid? Yeah. And so we need to be evangelistic and think of, in that sense, just like from our fundamentalist episode from a couple of weeks ago, in that sense, we do need to think about other people's kids as our kids. Not that they're our kids, but that we value them as persons that we love and that Jesus died for. And they're his kids, and they should be his kids. Yeah. And so let's remember to be evangelistic, but let's remember what the real data is on all of this and not listen to rhetoric and scare tactics. Do you have anything else to say about this, Dr. Jonathan Pritchett?
Yeah. What we've learned is atheists don't read scholarly articles, just the abstracts, because it's easier. We've learned that married Christians have better, happier, more fulfilling sex lives and more kids than atheists. So we need to start baby making apologetics as a thing.
We need a
classical
conference.
Apologetics, sexual apologetics, all kinds of stuff.
And a conference and a book. You can write that book on sexual apologetics.
Yeah, I'm not writing
by
that.
Pritchett Prime.
Well,
and
Prime
Misty, maybe.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That was you going through your filter.
Yeah, I'm thinking,
what can I say? What can I not say?
Right. Well, actually, I was thinking, my wife would be like, "You're not qualified to write that book."
Oh man,
self-deprecating humor is always funny. Yeah,
yeah,
I could just see my wife. No, I mean, my wife and I, when we ever go to the gym together, she's like the demotivator because she thinks that works. So she's like, "Come on, sissy, get the bar up, right?"
Your wife talks to you that way?
Yeah.
I think my wife would too. I think that's an Arkansas thing.
Come on, sissy, get that up there. I mean, now I'm lifting tons of weight back in my prime, and she plays with the bar.
I think of you and her, but take instead of modern day clothes, it's like 18th century clothes, and you're an agrarian people, and she's saying that same thing to you, like pulling the whatever on the farm,
right?
It's just a generational. Every Pritchett generation has had that.
So we've learned that Christians have better sex, more kids. Atheism is a self-correcting problem with a self-defeating worldview. And what else?
It's bad for economics.
Yeah, atheism is bad for the economy.
Not bad for a day's work, I think.
No.
And so...
see, that's one of the things and atheists don't understand this point. Is your worldview livable?
Right.
The livability test. Can you consistent? And I know they say
get a good book like Douglas Grutthouse's.
and they're like, no, those aren't real arguments. No, they really are real arguments. Is your world, because if you can't rationally and consistency live within it, it probably means there's something wrong with it. And they're like, well, that doesn't mean it's not true. It just may be
relativism, not livable. Determinism, not livable.
Yeah,
these are examples of not moral relativism, not livable.
Hyper-skepticism,
not livable at all.
Yeah. So, keep trying, though, and make more YouTube videos. There's not enough YouTube videos of atheists screaming in the camera or trying to be calm and say, well, I mean, it's not really because of the evidence, so it's just going to be, we just need to talk about our feelings and why.
Laughing at people, telling them they're just dumb sidekicks. It's just
That's awesome, though. Absolutely. But,
give us a thumbs up if you liked the intro this week.
I don't... some atheist called me a dumb sidekick on the... Yeah, I am the dumb sidekick. It's fun. I get paid to do this.
Hey, this one's great, because if the atheist commenters give a thumbs down, then I'm just going to assume they don't like Jonathan Pritchett being made fun of.
Right.
So
there you go.
You might as well give a thumbs up.
That's right.
All right. If you'd like to be a student at Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary, you can visit us at TrinitySem.edu.
Best seminary on the planet.
And you can study and get the access to those journal articles.
Yes.
If that motivates you to come, then come on. And
yes, atheists can become students here,
Sure.
and we'll witness to them.
Yeah.
And you can actually, instead of just reading abstracts, you can read the articles.
that's right. In fact, you'll have to.
Yes.
And check out our sister podcast, Steve Gregg's The Narrow Path, Leighton Flowers' Soteriology 101, and Billy Wendelin and Matt Chisholm's The Bible Bro Down.
Oh, they're having a good episode coming up with Heiser.
Michael Heiser.
Yeah, that's going to be good. So check that out.
You know, I
this
told
week.
him to ask.
What?
He asked, what do you think we should ask? And there's a lot of stuff, because I've read his book, The Unseen Realm. But I told him, I said, ask him this. There's a lot of people that think you've got really weird views, and they're not as weird as people act like they are. But what is the actually weirdest view you have, whether you've ever said it before or not? That's what I told her to ask him.
Yeah.
They said they might ask for the mini episodes.
What
so
is
we'll
his?
see.
Yeah. What is his?
What is the
weirdest-
actual weirdest view you hold? I think that'd be good.
That,
All right.
the Ezekiel saw the wheel, and that wheel really is alien.
Because if that dude says flat Earth,
He
Billy and
hates-
Matt's Bible bro down is going to go through
Heiser
the
hates-
roof.
Heiser hates.
If that
flat
dude
Earth.
says ancient aliens,
That
are
might-
the
that
are
is
the
more
Elohim?
yeah, that's more that's more possible than the flat Earth.
Oh, I hope so.
Heiser hates the flat earthers because they use his stuff.
Yeah, they're like,
to
see, the
prove
Bible says flat Earth.
and he's like, I don't believe that. Come on, quit
Yeah.
using me to push your thing. You know. Anyway,
Oh well.
thank you for watching us this week, and we hope to see you next time on Trinity Radio.
This is the last word.
Memeing Osteen. It never fails that some pastor of a local church on social media will post a meme about Joel Osteen or Creflo Dollar and decry about the state of abysmal preaching and tickling the ears. But what I find interesting is that this is kind of lazy. Because if you look up the pastor's hometown or city, you'll find that there's probably 4 or 5 other local churches where they preach more heretical stuff than even Joel Osteen does. But yet they're not memeing and blogging these local pastors who are down the road spewing heresy in their own backyard. So try something new, pastors. Instead of warning people about Joel Osteen, who's 1,000 miles away from you in Houston, Texas, where anyone in your town would have to stay up till 10 o'clock on a Tuesday to watch him on Daystar, which almost no one probably does, why don't you warn people about the pastors and the churches spewing heresy in your own town? At least then, you would be making a difference, because the people that you're Facebook friends with probably live close to you and may even be attending those churches where the heretical pastors are spewing their heresy. So try that for a change. And then, after you've done that and fixed that, then worry about Joel Osteen.